Enjoy this Wild Soul Gathering production. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie. Pour yourself a really tall glass of spiritual curiosity and join me for the Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. In the spirit of happy hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Hi, Dr. Sandra Marie here. We're happy to have everyone join us today. Our guest is Marie Major, spiritual author, speaker, and guide whose work explores our relationship with time, manifestation, and what she calls divine timing. In her new book, Looking Beyond the Tides of Time, Maria invites readers to question some of the beliefs many of us hold about time itself, the feeling that we're running out of it and falling behind or somehow missing our moment. Today we're asking the fascinating question, what if we're not behind at all? Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
What first led you to question our conventional understanding of time?
Oh, yeah. Since I've been young, I've always been like, what is it with time? Just the energy with time, how we have the past, the future, our dreams, everything. And I just really got into this whole energy of spirituality, the universe, law of attraction. But that's when I really was asking the deeper questions about time and timelines, past lives and future lives, and just how can we constantly anchor back into the present moment? Because I think time is such a precious energy. And in the universe, time is an illusion, but on planet Earth, we are so much surrounded by time. That's where I really wanted to help people have a different relationship with time, because I think that's just so important. That's where I started just kind of tapping into the energy of allowing people to connect with divine timing and to trust their journey, trust their path, and really allow time to be on their side.
Well, it sounds like you came in to this lifetime with maybe that is your mission. And I do want to touch on a couple of the topics that you just mentioned with manifestation and divine timing. But let's talk a little bit about the illusion of time to start. Many people organize their lives around clocks, calendars, deadlines, milestones in life. What do you think we've misunderstood about time itself?
I feel like we have been programmed to see time as linear, when to me, I see time as a spiral. So I have seen it as a spiral, and we constantly are moving in the spiral. So we are going within and then we are going outward. And it's a constant rhythm and a dance, and it's an art. So we choose personally in this lifetime, how are we going to allow ourselves to have that relationship with the spiral? But society has programmed us to be on such a linear timeline where it's calendars, it's clocks. We have to be here. I have to be on this podcast at this time. So we are very much around time. But how can I change the energy and how I look at time?
I would say I totally agree with what you've said, and I'm doing a lot of work with the spiral right now. And in fact, I've created a whole thing called Spiral Rebellion.
I love that.
That focuses on this. I have a whole website, and actually I wrote a song about it, interestingly enough. Who would have ever thought that would happen? But a conversation for another day. I guess my take on it is a different possibility. For me, the third dimension is linear time. And as we're evolving and our frequencies are raising and we're going up, the linear time is now dissolving and we're stepping into that whole spiral, as you said it. For someone new to the concept, it'll be interesting as we talk to help people understand it more, because I've had a lot of conversations about the spiral and the influence and, how we live our lives through that. And so many people will look at me and say, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. Well, we'll infuse that a little bit into this conversation. But your thoughts on how our relationship with that time shapes the way we experience life. Your belief in a linear timeline versus moving into the spiral timeline that we're stepping into?
Yeah, I feel like the spiral of time has always been the actual original
Yes, I agree. I
timeline.
was just going to say it is
Mhm.
ancient. It is the original. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, exactly. But we've been so taught, we've been programmed falsely. So this is where it's reminding us, and a lot of people in the world and also like in the spiritual communities are saying we are stepping into like this new earth energy or new timeline. But I always like to say we're stepping into the ancient earth. We're going back. We are not waking up, but we are remembering. So we're returning on the spiral. And that's kind of how I see it. So I think the last century or so, or even few centuries, have been such a linear way of looking at things, just like how you said about the 3D. But really, we are moving into that 5D
Yeah.
and even beyond that. But it's, I think, also a personal choice. I think it's also a daily choice. Like I also find myself, I've been channeling, practicing, meditating for over a decade now, but I still have days where I'm so stuck and I'm in this linear time. So I think it's something like it's an awareness daily and choosing it consciously. How am I going to move with intention? How am I going to move throughout my day? How am I going to look at things? So, where is my mind going? It's paying attention to where your thought patterns are. So, I think that's what is the thing that has been missing with just um, the whole idea around time and the energy of timelines. And I think now people are realizing, okay, actually, my past lives are still existing, and I could heal something in the past, a timeline in the past, by shifting my awareness and giving love to that timeline. And I think people are being more open to this.
Well, that'll be a perfect transition into this. I do agree, and I often refer to the spiral as ancient spiritual technology
Mm-hmm.
that is coming back as we're losing some of our density with that. And the other thing that you said that I think is truly, really, really important is that we do shift back and forth and that we
Mm-hmm.
need to give ourselves grace and
Yeah.
recognize that this is a fluid process and it's not a like I failed or something like that. It's fluid. Give yourself grace and really embrace the experience. You mentioned the timelines. What happens when people begin or have been measuring their lives against timelines? And to give timelines some definition, timelines that we've inherited from family, that we've inherited from our culture, or even from society.
Yeah. So certain timelines I feel can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So some people can be stuck in a certain timeline and they're not allowing themselves to heal and to evolve and grow, which when you do that, you shift into a higher timeline. But a lot of people stay stuck in an energy. And we've also been programmed by so many beliefs that aren't even ours. So I believe that since, up until you're 7 years old, the subconscious took on these beliefs and it has kind of wired your brain around beliefs that might be your parents' beliefs, your teachers, ancestral, society, your friends, whoever you were around or influenced during that time really shapes you and shapes what you're going to believe until you make that choice to be aware of your own beliefs and decide to individually choose what you want to believe, you could be just stuck in that pattern. So some people decide to hold on to a negative experience and not forgive the situation or even forgive themselves. So that will keep you stuck in a lower vibrational timeline where you're not able to shift into the higher timeline you desire. And a lot of times also people talk about manifestation where they want to manifest or create something, but then they go to their job and they hate their job. So you're not making peace with where you are. So you're sending out a signal to the universe that you don't like your job and this is the energy you want to keep creating. You don't get the actual career or work path that you desire because you're stuck in that vibration.
Let's just expand on that a little bit and talk about letting go of identities,
Mm-hmm.
some of which we've inherited, and many people don't even realize that they inherited from your family. Maybe your parents said, this is how other people do something, but this is how we do it.
Yeah.
You know, coming from different cultural backgrounds also can create that box.
Mm-hmm.
And depending where you live on the globe, different societies, that could look a little different. But people are also looking, and I feel like when the pandemic hit, this really blew the lid off of this for many people, or definitely a pretty significant cohort of people, where even the chosen identities of our job, our career, what we do in life started to be questioned. Many people left careers that they had been in for a long time because they weren't making sense to them anymore. I know even working so many decades as a nurse, a job that I loved and hold dear and had a lot of value, when I stepped out even in different roles within nursing, like say I moved out of the emergency department to case management,
Mm-hmm.
like people said, well, what are you going to do now that you're not a nurse? And it really struck me looking at that was my identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like who was I without that? What value did I hold without that, and doing the work with that? So what are you seeing now in this time, as there's so much happening in the world? There's so much happening with this evolution. What have you seen with people's letting go, recognizing it, being willing to do that, or some of the journeys that you've experienced?
Yeah, well, back to just briefly speak about COVID, I think it was such a beautiful time because it actually forced people to go inward. So you hear a lot of people had that like waking up or remembering experience because even before COVID, I would be like, you need to meditate and this and speaking about law of attraction and
Yeah.
nature. And people looked at me crazy and like, we're like, what? And how do you explain this though? And it's so beautiful to see that so many people are now stepping into this. It had to happen. Like, this is the direction on the spiral that we are returning back into. You know, it's just like thinking of like the circle of life, like the spiral of life, the spiral of evolution that we as humanity, as a collective, attracted this energy. And it will continue to keep doing that. And more people need to be stepping into an energy of remembering so the healing on planet Earth can continue. But there is such a big contrast happening on planet Earth right now. And I look at it as two forces in nature where we have one force of the forgetting and then the other force of remembering. This force holds a lot of energy of certain humans, maybe a lot of leaders, a lot of people who are in the forefront in the public, but it's also people who do not choose to heal. They end up getting sucked into that vortex, and maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, and they don't even know that they get sucked into that energy. And then also we have certain beings in the cosmos and eons that also are part of that forgetting force. So it's this big lower vibrational energy. And I think emotions that are in that vortex are fear, ego, service to self, narrow minded, racism, ignorance, hate, greed, hoarding. That's that energy. But then we have another force, which is what the God creator source is made up of, or nature, or actual natural force. And that is the force of love, unconditional love, and the remembering.
During COVID, the pandemic, I was working on some Indian reservations in New Mexico, and it was pretty dark and intense. It wasn't a good situation.
Mm.
And I remember the first time I heard someone say that the pandemic was actually one of four events, but they described it as a spiritual, that when we look back at it in history, we'll see it as a spiritual event, a spiritual awakening. And when I first heard the person say that, like it was a gut punch to me, I was like, what? Like, okay, I can see that, but I was still like living that experience that I experienced. And it was like, it's hard to say what was happening in that particular situation. It didn't feel so spiritual at the moment, but I do see it. I do see it now very clearly as a spiritual event. I would absolutely say that the pandemic was a spiritual event. And you talk about the hate and the greed and the people that are still sort of in that vortex. I think of it as looping. You know, people are in these loops, and you'll hear even people say, oh, I've got a new job and it's the same thing, it's the same experience. So there's a lot of looping that, you know, this third dimensional timeline, I would say. But when we start talking about the spiral and you start looking at things differently and making different choices, the looping shifts into you're walking that spiral where you may have the same experience, but it's not a loop experience. You're delving deeper into it and you're coming out of it with new lessons and more growth. And it feels different. And it feels more as you're remembering, as you're walking the spiral with whatever that experience is, it really shifts how the experience is experienced. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yes. Completely agree. It's also all so much about perception and how you're experiencing it and how you're perceiving that energy. But I like the looping concept because I also see, like, when I see the two forces of nature, I believe there's like an energy in the in between where there's some souls that like aren't completely evil, but they are kind of like their own worst enemy, and they keep themselves stuck in that timeline where they're not doing the inner work, but they have good intentions for humanity or nature, but then they don't have good intentions for themselves because they are stuck with this pattern of just kind of self-criticism on their self. So they're just stuck in this in between where you really, really need to let go.
I think that you're spot on with that because I think a lot of that is unconscious. Like you said, many people are very well intentioned and life just isn't going well for them. How can someone help them become a little more consciously aware of that, to know that there's other possibilities out there and they can make other choices?
Yeah, I think it's all about trying your best to reprogram your subconscious mind. And that is like before nighttime, have a little bit of a ritual, a meditation, a prayer, say a mantra when you're falling asleep. Like really be just so mindful of what thoughts you are directing. And then in the morning, you know, we are all so much like, oh, my alarm just went off. I want to keep sleeping. But that energy is actually so important. Or people are thinking, I have to drive, I have to get to work, I have to do this, I'm hungry. When really that's that period where you can create such a connection with nature and begin saying a mantra like, today's a new day, good things are coming to me. And that's where you begin to start having a dialogue and a rhythm of this new thought pattern in your mind and in your body because your cells are listening to your thoughts. But I always recommend The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murray. This book is back in like the 60s, I think he wrote it. And his teacher was this man named Abdullah from Ethiopia. And he was also the teacher of Neville Goddard.
Oh,
so so it's very interesting. But Joseph Murphy really explains in that book how to befriend your subconscious mind. And also like Eckhart Tolle says, watch the thinker, which is a famous, like such a good statement. Like how much are we actually present in our mind and in our body? And I think it's just really about trying to bring yourself back and catching yourself when your thoughts kind of run wild and really be in control. So there's a great balance, though, because you need to surrender in the universe, but also you need to take control of your thought patterns and how you're feeling, your mood, your attitude. So there's this beautiful balance where, Okay, you have to start feeling good within to allow the universe to respond to you. And I think a lot of people really miss that step. It's about creating within first, and everything else will begin to follow if you trust it. And then that's the surrendering.
Well, we're going to dive a little bit more into that. But first, I wanted to ask you, what does divine timing mean to you, Marie?
Divine timing to me means complete trust and complete faith. It's an alignment, it's a rhythm, it's a dance, it's a tapestry. That is what divine timing is. It is allowing yourself to understand that the universe, the cosmos, they have the plan for you. And if you just trust it, if you just use the compass instead of the clock, that is divine timing.
So, what would you say to someone struggling with how to continue moving forward when they can't see where the path is leading?
I feel like making peace with where you are right now is the most important thing. For me, in my past and still right now, I have to constantly remind myself just make peace with where you are and step into an attitude of faith. That's really what has helped me, because when people don't realize, when you don't make peace with where you are in life, you are creating resistance. And then that energy creates a field of resistance. And then you are held back when really you should be moving on the spiral. So I think it's just really important to make peace with where you are, and then also just take baby steps. I think so many people, it's so important to reach for the stars, but remember that manifestation is really about creating an attitude. It's creating an energy. It's creating a field. And people want so much of the physical manifestation when everything actually is non-physical. We come from non-physical. The universe is non-physical. Like, you must believe it to see it. So it's really getting into that place of just connection with the universe, creator, with nature, with source. And that's, to me, is the biggest win. That's what success really is.
Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to share why this work matters. The world doesn't need more noise these days. It needs more thoughtful conversations. That's why I created Wild Souls Gathering in this podcast, spaces where curiosity is welcome, questions are honored, and exploration matters. Each week, I have the privilege of introducing you to inspiring guests and lesser-known voices doing meaningful work in the world. Together, we're exploring what it means to live a more aware and authentic life. If these conversations bring value to you, please subscribe, share the show, and consider supporting Wild Souls Gathering. Your support helps keep this work independent, ad-free, and accessible. Thank you for being here, and now let's get back to the conversation. Nice. You talked about a lot of that, like unseen with trust. Mm-hmm. Can trust and action exist together?
Yeah, so I like to say that aligned action, actually, Abraham Hicks, who's channeled by Esther Hicks, really talks about aligned action versus forced action. When I heard that like years ago, I was like, wow, that is so point on, because so many people create from a forceful place, from a place where the creative energy is not flowing. They're not tuned in, they're not tapped in, they're not in alignment. But when you begin to go within, create within, get in alignment, ground yourself, open yourself to the energy, that's when inspired action starts coming in. And this is the thing about channeling. Like, yes, we can channel guides, we can channel star beings, we can channel angels, Yeshua, but also channeling is like cooking, it's dancing, it's a sport, it's walking, it's writing, it's anything can be a form of channeling. So when we open ourselves up to the cosmos, we're able to really receive the messages.
I like that inspired action. I think that we've all had experiences with trying to force manifestation.
Yes.
Versus aligning with it. So again, I'm going to go back to give yourself grace
Yes.
But I'm sort of curious about your thoughts on this. Is there a difference between trusting timing and refusing to make a choice?
I think when it comes to trust and trusting timing, you would know from your intuition what choice to make in that timeline, in that certain point. So it's going back to trusting your intuition. So when you have to make a choice, feel into your intuition. If it's telling you to wait, if it's telling you to make the jump, if it's telling you to take a step back, I think you need to listen to that intuition. And yeah, do some people maybe get it wrong? Maybe, but that's okay because it doesn't mean that that experience won't ever be there again. That's the thing. We can step back into the field of possibilities whenever we want. I like how earlier you said that time is fluid, which I like to always think as time as a body of water. So the energy is always there. It's always moving, just like our dreams or desires. It's there. It's never gone. And that's where people are like, oh, am I going to miss out? And this is where when you hear things like people say in their 50s or 60s that they made this amount of money or created this business. And it's because that's when they actually really let go and allowed. They weren't just so hung up. They weren't holding on to it with such force. Or when a woman is trying to get pregnant and you hear this a lot and they're saying, oh, you can't, then they decide to adopt, then she gets pregnant. So it's really this energy of just really trusting and understanding everything you desire is always going to be there. It's not going to be taken away from you. For people to think that, it's such a false narrative. I want people to understand that the energy is always there.
I love that example. Let's talk a little bit about the eternal now. You talk about the eternal now as a place where healing, choice, and creation can happen. Can you just expand on that a little more?
Yeah, I feel like the eternal now is where source, creator, God, whichever name you like to say, is there. That is the energy. The eternal now is the cosmos, it's the universe. When we allow ourselves to go beyond the human mind and human body and step more into our soul and more into our higher self, we step into this new realm of the eternal now. I feel like the eternal now grounds that human. You get grounded, you get anchored into planet Earth where you begin allowing yourself to trust in the now moment. And this is where kind of time can stop or slow down. You see things differently. You are more aware. You're connected with nature. You see how the animals interact with nature. You see how it's such a different connection with stepping into that realm. And I think the eternal now is everything. I think it's always going to be there. And our souls, I believe, are on eternal now journey. So no relationship is ever gone. Any person who comes into planet Earth and then they pass away or they move on to a different realm or different energy, it's still there. That relationship still exists.
I would agree with that. We've been talking about time, and that was a great explanation. And you talked about the work we can do to like slow time down. I feel that we have the ability to slow time down in the moment when we're in an event and things just seem to be going too fast or we are overwhelmed. We can just take a moment to be present and ask for time to slow down.
Exactly.
And it will. I think that that's important. We're going to get a little more into control and talking about control. People can feel like they don't have control, and we do have all these abilities to influence and actually shift things up a little bit. Here's a big one. Many people spend their lives replaying the past or worrying about the future, like that is what they're consumed with. Thoughts on how to help people break that pattern to get to the present moment?
Yeah, well, I feel like it is tapping into the eternal now. That's how you kind of let go of the past, let go of the worry of the future. But it's also like just like how I was saying that when you step into the eternal now, how is your practice? So just like how you just said, you can open and ask for to be in the present moment. So that little mantra, that little prayer, but it's also like allowing yourself to have meditation on a daily practice will really allow yourself to create this relationship of complete trust and faith in the alignment of the eternal now. And once you do that, you open this realm, this portal, where now, because I deliberately quieted my mind, I've been in a place of stillness, I've connected with my guides, my higher self, you're going to receive better feeling thoughts now. You're not going to have also anxiety about the future. So when you open yourself up, you're opening this realm to that quieter voice that is the energy of where everything you desire exists. But we have, I like to say, we have an ego, right? And that's the loud voice in our head. Mm-hmm. So when we meditate or we pray or walk or get into nature, that's how we actually step into that energy, into that realm. And we open ourselves up to allow our mind to actually receive better thoughts, because now we have quieted the ego more.
So when we're thinking about our everyday life and what we're interacting with in the world, our relationships and those types of things, what becomes possible when we become more present?
I feel like anything becomes possible. Like if you are stepping into that field where all your possibilities exist, you come into a certain timeline with desires, a soul journey, a mission. And the more you allow yourself to step into that energy, okay, what does my soul want? What fills me up? What fills my cup up, but also fills up the cup for humanity? And you're coming from a place of more unconditional love, that's where you open everything. But a lot of people will do this on purpose or sometimes unconsciously be such at a point where we're only service to self, because we are looking through our own lens, right? But when we allow ourselves to maybe look through the lens of our soul or through nature, because it's all connected, we allow ourselves to look through those eyes, like putting on a new pair of glasses, you see everything differently. And you see all the possibilities. You see all the dreams there. You see that everything exists. But it's really making that choice to tap into unconditional love. But it's easier said than done because, there's relationships, there's patterns, there's also ancestral lineage coming in, there's certain beliefs, religious things, trauma that is coming through that people can't step into a place of unconditional love because there's been so much trauma and so much pain around a certain energy. So it's about really making that choice to look through it in a different lens, in the lens of unconditional love.
Well, I do agree that 100% service to others is equally as important as 100% service to yourself. Mm-hmm. Both are equally important, and bringing them together will make a difference. Mm-hmm. So in an everyday life, this could affect a family relationship, friend relationship. We talk, I'll say philosophically, although for you and I, this isn't philosophical, this is truth. But as we're living on this earth plane world, like what might that look like for someone who's not quite necessarily where we're at right now? They're feeling this, they're seeing this, but they can't see, how could this actually make my life look different?
I feel for people who are maybe like new to this concept or this energy, it's about allowing yourself to really take a step back and to begin the practice, to do the inner work, to do the healing. I think it's interesting because something came up so much through my meditation the other day, just because of what is happening on planet Earth and humanity. And I was getting upset because, there's so many great spiritual communities, but they're not focusing on the truth. what is happening. What came through was that spirituality is listening. That is the whole point. But we sometimes are just kind of listening to our ego minds and not listening to our inner self or one another. And I think that's important, that we have to listen to humanity and also listen to nature. What is nature telling us? Because it's always communicating, it's always speaking. Like God, creator, speaks through nature. I think for someone who's new to this concept and wants to make a change in their life, they really have to go within. I don't know one spiritual person who has not been in the dark night of the soul journey. And I still have mine. Like it's a constant rhythm. It's not that you meditate for 10 years and you read all these spiritual books and you're channeling all these cosmos and energy and then you think you know it all. That's not true, because it's a never-ending journey. It's a journey. It's a constant flowing on the spiral. But when we make peace with that and understand that wisdom is actually listening to one another and listening to different cultures, different countries, different religions, we open ourselves up to all the possibilities. And I agree with you. Yes, there's a point where you need to be selfish. There's a reason why they say you need to put the mask on before you put the mask on for your child on a plane. Right. Because, a mother needs to be okay to take care of her child. So I agree with that statement. But there's a lot of souls right now on planet Earth that have taken the service to self way too far. And they're living through their wounds. They are moving intentions from a wounded area. So this is where we have humans who aren't doing the inner work. And then this is where the energy of separation comes in. And when we have that divide and separation, that feeling, that energy, people pick up in the collective. So we also have a personal journey, but we also have a collective journey going on right now.
That's also very important, and it's important to have that awareness and recognize that. And I love the tangible way that you shared all of that.
Thank you.
You mentioned the manifestation process earlier. So what role or how does presence change the manifestation process? Personally, I feel like as we're going through this evolution and this different shifting, that the manifestation process is shifting a little more. And I'll go back to old spiritual technology or old technology into the newer, more evolved technology. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like, manifestation it's such an interesting subject, because years ago I was really studying manifestation, and now I feel like my whole idea around it has changed for the better, though. And manifestation is a place where, like, yes, when you get in the present moment, you are letting go of what you want to manifest, right? You're kind of surrendering when you're in a place of present and being in the present. But also manifestation, I like to think of it more so as creation. It's a creation process where so many people kind of are like, oh, I want to manifest this. I want to manifest this career, this physical item, this amount of money. And that's where it became more the 3D physical energy, where I hope and I feel that more people are now moving into a place where manifestation is actually a place of a state of consciousness, a state of awareness, a state of an alignment. And that is more important than the actual physical manifestation. It goes back to where, speaking about the spiral of the energy, and we're turning back to more of an ancient civilization, which, I believe Africa was the root of humanity. Then we had Lemuria and then Atlantis. And I feel like we've been returning back on the spiral, but from a higher perspective. It could change. It depends with the collective field of what is happening around the world, the events, how we are all tuning in, how we are all vibrating, feeling? Are we sending love? Are we sending fear? What is happening? So this is why it's such now not just manifesting your personal stuff in your life. We are manifesting on a global scale now, which I think was always what Lemuria, Africa were about. And I think Atlantis was about that too before it got corrupted. And we're kind of seeing the similar patterns during Atlantis with this timeline right now, because it was this such a masculine energy during Atlantis and the technology was so advanced. I think the technology, as we can see now with AI in the last 20 years, how much technology has advanced. This is where people need to understand, what is your relationship with technology? Because just like technology can be looked at as time, so what is your relationship with it? Because it's the person behind the technology. When people ask me, oh, what do you think about AI? I'm not scared about AI. I'm scared about the human or the being's intention behind the AI, if that makes sense. Like, what is their intention? What is the energy of the user behind the AI? So it's really about, like, how are we as a collective gonna respond and manifest future timelines, if that makes sense. I kind of went totally off on your question.
No, but that's okay. I mean, AI is really at the top of conversations these days, especially in the spiritual world. And I do think that intention is the key to all of it. It's a tool just like anything else. And what are we doing with it? When you talk about collective or oneness, and a lot of times people have a hard time with what that actually
Yeah.
means. More to come on it, right? I
Yeah.
think that that's a whole nother conversation that we can have, and it'll probably be coming sooner than later. So thank you actually for bringing that up. I do want to go back just a little bit to something we talked about earlier, only because I think this has got a lot of value and a lot of people are either awakening to this or unsure how to make the transition from. What can change when someone shifts from identifying with that old story? We talked about the old stories we tell ourselves, to identifying with new possibilities. Like, how can that help someone?
Oh, I feel like it changes everything. You don't just open all these new doors, you open a whole new realm. And I think when you realize that you are beyond this human experience and you are living a human experience, but how can I tap into my soul's journey and into that experience? You really have just opened a dimension of, like, new timelines, new possibilities. So when people really let go of that old identity and realize, okay, I'm not just this physical body, it's not just about this timeline. It allows you to just look beyond everything, and it really opens everything up. And I think that's where people, like, have such an awareness. It's a new experiences, it's a new shift in timelines, it's a new state of consciousness that you tap into, and then it just begins to really flow through you. And allowing that energy to come in will create everything. It also, I believe, will heal any physical pain you have, any illness. It creates a new rhythm, a new field, a new blueprint. That's really what you are stepping into.
Very nice and wonderful. How wonderful that is. And again, we do have the ability to do these things. And you don't even
Yeah.
need to be all in on it. You could just start dipping your toe into it. And I do think people will see positive shifts in their lives with that. Earlier in the conversation, we talked or mentioned control a couple of times. Marie, your thoughts on how we can participate in life without trying to control life? Because that ego of ours, man, it loves
Oh,
to
it
control.
does.
Right?
I know. It's it's the worst. I'm like, that's no, it's such a difficult thing. And yeah, I actually really like using the word ego because I know other people will say, oh, your alter ego or your ego's not that bad. But I think it's the best label for that voice in your head that actually really is keeping you back and really holding on to you. And it's that control energy. And it's just like how we were speaking about the subconscious mind and how to reprogram that, because the subconscious mind is like a human computer that has taken everything in your whole entire life, everything you've watched, heard, seen, and you might not be even consciously aware, but these programs are programming you on a daily basis. That's where you need to make the choice to reprogram the subconscious mind, because what the subconscious mind does, it is actually trying to protect you. So if you went through something like a trauma or a really painful experience, let's say when sometime in your past or even in a past life, it holds on to that energy until you forgive it, until you heal it. So it's constantly going to keep feeding you these kind of doubtful, fearful thoughts that won't allow you to actually succeed and move forward in the spiral. This is where, like, back to what Joseph Murphy was saying, he said, like, you really need to befriend your subconscious mind and give it orders and tell it how to think. So it's taking that control in your mind, but also having a balance where you are allowing the universe to figure everything out for you. It's kind of like you're putting maybe the universe in the driver's seat. You're taking the back seat, but you are controlling your thoughts by saying stuff like, I trust you, universe. I'm allowing the universe to figure it out. I'm going to feel good today. I'm not going to worry about that. Maybe let me have a nice meal. Maybe let me not worry about things right now. Maybe let me put on a funny movie or something like that. Let me take a walk in nature. That rhythm creates your ego to get quieter and quieter. And I think that's really the goal, is to allow your inner self's voice to come through, because it's a quiet whisper. It's subtle. It's really a soft energy. It's nature. And when we understand that, we begin to open up this new alignment in our field and in our consciousness. But a lot of times people are just so stuck in their reality.
Those are all actionable. So there was a little bit of something in there for anyone and everyone to really start being aware and making a difference. Start taking control of letting go of control. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, Marie, for someone interested in learning more about your work, how would they do that and what would that look like?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Marie Major _. And then my website is mariemajor.love. And then I'm also on YouTube where it's Marie _Major.
Thank you for that.
So that's where they can find me.
I have one last question as we're winding down.
Yes.
What's the most important thing that we didn't talk about today?
That's a good question. I think what needs to be spoken about right now is humanity. I think that's really what I've been diving deep into. And I've been getting triggered a lot because I feel like even some spiritual communities I'm part of or people I tune into, I feel like that is missing in the collective right now. And I think it's an important, very important subject. There just needs to be more awareness around humanity and what is happening in the collective, because I really feel like we as humans didn't just come in to this lifetime to just create. We also have a responsibility. We have to live by that responsibility and really help evolve and expand the consciousness of planet Earth. This is what we're here for. So I think it's really about humanity and also nature. I think nature, the animal kingdom, and the respect that it deserves, the rituals, the practices, the bowing down to nature it really needs to be spoken about.
Those are both really important and great ways to end the show. That's a beautiful message to leave with people. Marie, thank you for joining me today and for sharing your perspective.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
I love it. And, one of the themes that stood out for me throughout today's conversation is the idea that, we're not behind, we're not off course, that we're just right where we need to be. And we just need to believe. Perhaps some of the pressure we carry comes from stories we've inherited about where we should be rather than where we actually are. And to learn more about Happy Hour and what's happening at Wild Souls Gathering, you can go to our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join both Marie and myself. Until next time, stay curious. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on YouTube. And if you'd like to explore these topics more deeply, visit wildsoulsgathering.com, where you'll find free resources and guided practices designed to support your own journey of curiosity, healing, and personal growth. This is Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love.